as a psychologist, I don't get to choose the issues, the struggles that couples bring to me to get help, whether it's parenting, financial, or what we're talking about today, their physical intimacy part of the relationship. Now, this uh, sexlessness in marriage can be very intentional or not intentional. And it can hurt. It can hurt so bad. So I'm giving you from my experience of decades of watching these tears and the joy of getting better. Now, last episode, we talked about, the whole 5 phases of the sexual curve. Okay, the environment, the invitation, the foreplay, the during, and the after. We talked about some of the core beliefs that sex is bad or using it to control one another or reward one another. We talked about intimacy and anorexia and the solutions for that. So now, if you missed any of that last episode, I encourage you to click back and find it and watch it, because it's really going to help you be intelligent to minister or maybe find out what's going on in your own marriage. But now let's talk about another cause that can destroy the physical intimacy in marriage. Okay, this is sexual addiction or pornography addiction. And it might sound crazy that someone who has an addiction to these kind of behaviors would then turn around and be not connecting in that way with their spouse. I mean, it's insane. I remember sitting at a table with some of the global leaders at that time in the late 80s dealing with sexual addiction, and we're trying to understand who is this guy or gal who comes into our office and is having all of this activity but refuses to connect to their spouse, okay? And so let me walk you through the different ways or the paths that people become addicted, okay? Number one is the biological connection, okay? 1 Corinthians 6:18 says this, that when we sin sexually, we sin against our own body. Well, what does that mean? Why is it if we lie, it's not a sin against our body, but when we sin sexually, it's a sin against our own body? Because there's such a neurological connection to when we have a sexual encounter that we actually glue and attach to whatever we're looking at, whether that's pornography or the love of our life. Either way, we build a sexual template and desire to repeat that behavior. And a person who's addicted has done this oftentimes thousands of times. Now, hear my heart on this. For the last 40 years, I have done people's sexual histories. And I can tell you that 98% or more of men and women who struggle with sexual addiction were struggling way before they were married and neurologically glued to pornography or fantasy way before they ever entered the covenant. Another way they can get there is through their soul being damaged, like psychologically. They get neglected by their parents or bullied or abandoned. And this fantasy world, this other world fills the whole of their soul. And they connect it with a chemical reward in their body. And it builds this kind of like marriage, if you will, to this other world. Now, spiritually, there's also some people who they're just looking for God in all the wrong places, and they go through a phase of trying to connect that intimacy that they're looking for with God through sexual behaviors that are inappropriate. Now, another way that people can get really damaged, and whether they become addicted or not, is if they've been sexually abused. Now, 15% of men, 30% of women listening to my voice right now have been sexually abused, whether by someone of the same gender or opposite gender. And it wasn't that you got lucky if you were a guy, you got abused. And they walk around wounded. And this can carry into their marriage if it's not healed. Now, it's the responsibility of the person who abused you. They're responsible for the behavior, but it's our responsibility. Okay, I was sexually abused, but it was my responsibility to heal me so I can be the best in my marriage. It's not my spouse's fault, and they shouldn't pay for it. I need to do the work, okay? And like we talked about in the last segment, intimacy and anorexia also can happen from being addicted to pornography. Now, another thing that can happen is if someone has a mood disorder. Now, I'm talking physically. Paul said in 1 Thessalonians that I pray that you sanctify your spirit, soul, and body. That's 5:23. And so we're in three different dimensions, right? And what I find out is that someone can be depressed or they can have up and down moods that are totally physically connected. Okay, that's all biological. The brain's not producing stuff. Now, sometimes it's related to unstuck grief. Sometimes it's related to hormones imbalance. Sometimes related to your thyroid not being healthy. And you can have mood disorders based on any of those things. But here, if you are experiencing addiction to any of this or something else even, just I'm going to go through some of the criteria here. And I'm saying this stuff because I want you to be able to minister. Half of the men in the church are struggling with this. Okay? More than 30% of pastors are struggling with this. This isn't something that we can continue to, do a blind eye and say it's not happening in my church. No, it's happening. It's just, is there anyone with the medicine in your church willing to step up and start healing them? Okay, that's the question. The question is not whether the cancer exists in your body. I'm talking about the body of Christ that you go to, your congregation. It's whether someone's going to heal it. Okay, here's signs of someone being addicted to anything. Social media, alcohol, caffeine, carbohydrates, or pornography. You've made efforts to stop some kind of behavior. Okay, you tried. You genuinely tried. But you failed. You've made promises to yourself or to others that you're going to stop. And you failed. You face consequences for your actions, sometimes legal, professional, or just in your relationship, or even just with you and God, feeling like you're far away. All right? You still continue the behavior even after facing the consequences. I know people who've lost their jobs, lost their marriages, lost their ministry, and they still engage in the behavior. You also build up a tolerance. It seems like it takes more and more and more for you to get that same feeling. You can also experience withdrawals or mood swings or irritability or confusion if you can't get access to your addiction. Like people who are addicted to their cell phones, oh my gosh, when they don't know where it is, it's like Panicville. I mean, if I don't know where my cell phone is, I'll just go quietly looking around. I'm not like going to be stressed out about it because I know I brought it home, right? But if you're addicted, it's like, oh my gosh, we don't have cell service. What am I going to do? Live, right? Okay. Also, if you have an addiction, you'll spend less time with your friends, family, or social interactions. Now, sexual addictions create object-oriented kind of sexuality. It's not relational. And over time, the addiction always, it can choose a different preference than the spouse's dimensions, okay? Then the spouse feels alone or used or neglected. So you can see how addictions, especially sexual addictions, can hurt and really damage both people in the marriage. And it can eventually even lead to a marriage without physical intimacy. Now, addiction of any type can actually lead to that situation because of the immaturity, okay, that the other person stays in. And if you feel like any of this applies to you or maybe your spouse, I strongly encourage you, to get the information that we're talking about today, Sexless and Married, and you can begin to heal. There's lots of information on sexual addiction. There's lots of information on being a partner or married to someone with a sexual addiction. On our website, you can access all of that.
For more content and resources to help in your healing journey with Christ, make sure to follow Dr. Doug Weiss on Facebook and Instagram. If you'd like to share full episodes of this show with friends and family, subscribe to Healing Time Ministries on YouTube, and feel free to leave us a comment on any of Dr. Doug's social media platforms. Our team would love to hear your feedback and learn how Healing Time is impacting your life, your church, and your ministry.